In this part, we will discuss about spinal cord and remaining part of the lesson. Spinal cord extends from the medulla of the brain down almost the whole length of the backbone or vertebral column up to the second lumbar vertebra. The arrangement of gray matter and white matter is opposite to that of the brain. That is, gray matter is present inside and white matter is present outside. The covering of the brain continues in the spinal cord as well. Outermost dura, middle is arachnoid and innermost is pia mater. Again, the fluid present between meninges is also same, that is CSF. Okay. Now, what is the actual function of spinal cord? Student, the spinal cord perform the functioning of controlling reflex. This is the internal structure of spinal cord. Okay. Now here I will revise few terms which we discussed earlier, that is stimulus receptor, effector, impulse. Okay. Now if you see in this picture, there are two different lines explained. Let's begin with the number wise. Number one is skin. Okay. The skin is receptor organ. It will receive the impulse, it will receive the stimulus. The blue color lines arising from the skin reaching to the spinal cord, they are called as what? Sensory neuron. Correct? They are called as what? Sensory neuron. Sensory neuron, they are entering into the spinal cord. Whatever impulse they are carrying will be processed. If it is very simple process or it is very simple reflex, it will be processed inside the spinal cord itself. The response is generated through this purple color line, that is label number 5, that is interneuron, or it is also called as association neuron. And this impulse or the decision, whatever is generated, will pass on to the red color line. Can you see label 7, that is motor neuron? This motor neuron will carry the impulse towards the muscle. What do you call muscle? Effector. Skin was receptor, here muscle is effector. Okay. Now suppose this includes no muscular action but certain secretion of the gland. Now this time please follow green color line, label 8. Okay. This is autonomic motor neuron and it will supply or it will pass on the impulse to the respective glands or respective organs. Correct? This is the diagram of reflex arc, student. The diagram of this reflex arc is given on page number 131. Figure 10.9 P diagram. Mark this diagram important and you have to sketch and label in your notebook. Correct? Now if you see here, this reflex arc shows certain structure. I want all of you to turn page number 131 and be on that diagram 10.9b. Please untick mark the receptor, that is skin, second sensory neuron, then dorsal ganglion, dorsal root, spinal cord, association neuron, ventral root, spinal nerve and effector. This is called a simple reflex arc. Okay, reason I will tell you later on. What is happening in this arc? The stimulus is accepted or received by the receptor. It is transmitting through sensory neuron, enters into first in dorsal ganglion. What is ganglion? It is the aggregation of cyton. So whatever impulse traveling through this sensory neuron will be amplified and slightly analyzed in dorsal ganglion, and clear impulse passed into the spinal cord from dorsal side. Dorsal side means from back side. Okay, from the back side it enters into the spinal cord. Now first it will enter into white matter because white matter is present outside. Then it enter into gray matter. Even in the diagram on your screen you can see white matter and gray matter is different. Okay, in gray matter this impulse is analyzed further, the response is generated, and association neuron will transfer this message to the motor neuron. Motor neuron will leave the spinal cord from ventral side. From ventral side, enters into the ventral root, and from ventral root it will come outside the spinal cord and it will go to the effector muscle. Now before joining to the effector muscle, you can see that there is a label in figure 10.9, that is spinal nerve. If you recollect from earlier video, we discussed three types of nerve: sensory nerve, motor nerve and spinal nerve. The spinal nerve talk about the bundle of two different axon, one sensory axon and second is motor axon. Okay, so this part of this reflex arc contains both the axon, therefore it is spinal nerve, right? Functions of spinal cord. Now please look at the screen. It will control the reflexes below the neck, conduct the sensory impulse from the skin or muscle to the brain, and conducts motor impulses from brain to the muscles of our limbs or trunk. Peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system consists of somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Somatic nervous system is further classified into cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Now, what is cranial nerves? Cranial nerves are the nerves which are arising from our brain. They are 12 pairs and some are sensory in functioning, some are motor and some are mixed. Now in front of you, you will see the number and the name of all 12 cranial nerves, not in our syllabus. But what is important, I want you to remember minimum 3 examples. Number 1 is olfactory, number 2 auditory and number 3 optic. Okay, olfactory number 1 cranial nerve, optic number 2 and auditory number 8. If you see their nature in column 5, all are sensory in function, correct? Motor nerve, like the one which is going to the eye muscle. Which one is going to the eye muscle? If you see oculomotor, cranial nerve number 3, it is motor in nature. That means they are sending messages to the eye muscles and ciliary bodies. Okay, what is ciliary body and what are eye muscles, that we will discuss in sense organ lesson. And mixed nerve, for example, the nerves which are going to and coming from the face and the tongue. Now facial muscle, facial nerves, can you see the cranial nerve number 7, taste bud, salivary gland, facial, neck muscle, and their nature is mixed. Okay, what does this mean? Perfect, they will bring the impulse towards the brain and supply information to the same organ again, right? Remember, their number is more important. They are 12 pairs. If you write only 12, then you will not get the marks, right? We'll go to the next point. Spinal nerves. Spinal nerves are 31 in pairs, 8 pairs in the neck region, 12 pairs in the thorax or thoracic cavity, 5 pairs in lumbar region, 5 pairs in the sacral region and 1 pair in coccygeal region. Okay, so in bracket if you see C, T, L, S, CO, they are the short forms of the group or the region where they are present. Okay, typical spinal nerve I already shown you and discussed in earlier slide of this. We'll move on to the next part, that is autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is a pair of chain of nerves and ganglion on either side of vertebral column. The basic function of this autonomic nervous system is to control the involuntary action of internal organs. Autonomic nervous system do not come under the control of CNS student. Hence the name is autonomic. Okay, and it is made up of two different parts, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Both will function exactly opposite to each other. Now if you turn to the page number 129 of your textbook, you will see figure 10.8. There at the base you can see sympathetic and parasympathetic. In the bracket their function is mentioned. Sympathetic system prepares the body for action, parasympathetic prepares the body for relaxation. Right? Now Currently, your both systems are working, but on a higher side, that is on 60% side, your sympathetic system is working because you are alert, you are doing certain action. I hope so. You are listening to me, you are looking at the screen, you are reading something, right? So this is the function of sympathetic. And when we retire to the bed, what happens with our body and who controls our body is parasympathetic, as it prepares body for relaxation. We'll go ahead. Sympathetic system, it arises from the spinal cord present between the neck and west region. It will perform functions like this. It will dilate the pupil, inhibit the salivation, relax the bronchi, accelerate the heartbeats, inhibit the peristalsis and secretion, stimulate glucose production, secretion of adrenaline from adrenal gland. Okay. Parasympathetic nervous system, it is located at the two place, that is between head and neck, and the another is sacral region. The nerve from the head and neck region, they will constrict the pupil, stimulate the flow of saliva, constrict the bronchi, slows the heartbeat, stimulate the peristalsis and secretion, stimulate the bile secretion, and contracts the bladder. Now if you see, exactly they are doing opposite function. Please turn to the page number 130 of your textbook. There you will see table 10.1, effect of two parts of autonomic nervous system on different organs: heart, blood vessel, lungs, intestine. Okay. Now what you have to remember is only the words which are printed in bold letters. Heart, sympathetic system accelerate the heartbeat, parasympathetic retards the heartbeat. You can't simply say stop the heartbeat. Okay. Blood vessel, constrict the blood vessel except coronary, it will dilate, and parasympathetic will dilate out the blood vessel except coronary, it will be constrict. So exactly opposite action. So please tick mark few important organs: heart, blood vessel, lungs, pupil of the eye, salivary gland, and body as a whole. Okay, these many you have to remember for your exam point of view. Right? We'll go ahead. There is certain relation between emotion and the functioning of autonomic nervous system. It is strongly influenced by our emotion. For example, grief, anger, fear, or sexual stimulation, and it will result into high blood pressure, stomach ulcer, some other troubles may arise. Okay, due to prolonged emotional stress. That's why we say whatever is in our mind, simply speak up. Okay, so that we can release the pressure from our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. We'll go to the next point. Reflexes. Reflexes, the term come from the Latin word reflux, which means reflected or directed back. There are two types of the reflexes, that is voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary actions means what? Which occur consciously, or which we will perform consciously, that is reading of the book, writing of the notes, watching TV, picking up of any instrument, right? An involuntary action which will occur unknowingly, and it is also called as reflexes. Okay, and they are totally depend on the stimulus. That stimulus, whether it is coming from internal environment or external environment. See, the involuntary action is also known as reflex action. How you can define it? It is an automatic, quick, immediate involuntary action in the body which is brought about by stimulus unknowingly. It is a quick response. For example, flushing of the tears to wash out the particles when it enters in your eye, shivering when it is too cold, or sweating when there is a too hot, dilation of the pupil when you are entering into the dark room. Correct? So all these are the examples of reflex action. On page number 131 of your textbook, you can see a table 10.2, difference between reflexes and voluntary actions. We'll go to the next point, that there are two types of reflexes present in our body. Number one is natural reflex or inborn reflexes. These reflexes are present in our body since birth, and they do not require any kind of learning or previous experience of stimulus. For example, blinking, coughing, sneezing, swallowing, and salivation. Okay, all these are present in our body. Nobody had taught us earlier how to blink, how to blink the eyes, how to cough, how to sneeze, and how to swallow the food. Okay, those are natural. But there are certain reflexes which we acquired throughout our life. They are also called as conditioned reflexes. And example is salivation after the smell or at the sight of the tasty and familiar food, playing of an instrument, correct? Giving a hand signal, applying the brakes, use of keys, tying of your shoelace, all these are come under conditioned or acquired reflexes. This reflexes is very well explained by a renowned psychologist, Russian biologist also, Pavlov. In his experiment, Pavlov explained about how these reflexes develop in our body. He offered the food to his dog exactly at same time every day. After a month, at same time, instead of providing food, he rang the bell and he measured whether the dog salivate or not. Absolutely, there were two different stimulus. In A diagram, if you see, there is the stimulus is food. So hence, the reflex action from the dog expected was salivation. But in the B diagram, ringing of the bell. So the stimulus is different. Hence, the response is different. In diagram C, or in the next step of his experiment, what Pavlov did, first he rang the bell and then he started offering the food. This continues almost a month. So the brain of the dog started programming like this, that once the bell rings, the food comes. So he had started clubbing of two different stimulus at a time. And when he looked at the food, the response was salivation. In D diagram, if you see, that is in the next step of the experiment, Pavlov only rang the bell. And what was there in the dog's mind? That as soon as the bell rings, the food will come. So hence the dog was ready and dog started salivating. In the diagram A, C and D, the Pavlov measured the amount of saliva secreted and what he found was the volume of the saliva is same. So this proves that we can condition the reflexes in animals and hence in the dog. Okay. Now if you take another example, if you just kneeling down to pick up the stone, the dog will run away. This is very commonly observed condition of reflex found in the dogs. Wild animal in circus, they are trained in a similar manner. Okay. The next point is pathways. The nervous pathways are of two types in our body. Number one is simple pathway, which will include only two neurons, that is sensory neuron and motor neuron. Here, what are the different factors are included? Number one is receptor. Receptor will receive the impulse. It will send to the sensory axon by dorsal root ganglion. It enters into the spinal cord. Spinal cord will process the impulse, send that response to the motor impulse, and motor impulse will give message or impulse to the effector organ, whether it is muscle or gland. Okay. Since there is involvement of only two neurons, that is sensory and motor, we called it as simple pathway. The complex pathway. Complex pathway includes three neurons, that is sensory neuron, motor neuron and association neuron. Now please remember, this association neuron is little bit different than the association neuron present in the spinal cord. This association neuron is present between the spinal cord and the brain. The first row, what you can see on your screen, is similar that of simple pathway. What is added? The impulse from the spinal cord will go to the brain. Brain will analyze that impulse, develop the response, and then this response will come to the spinal cord. So who is the intermediate in between this process is association neuron. Complex pathway basically function when there is a requirement of too much thinking. For example, solving of questions, high order thinking questions, or taking a decision, right, which involves analysis of the situation. That time this complex pathway work. Okay. This much from my side. Thank you so much. I will request all of you to go through this video again, read your lesson, try to solve the progress check questions and solve the job sheet and appear for the test. Before taking your leave, let me tell you one thing, that Google Drive had certain amount of limitation to store the data. So I request all of you to store this videos of all the subject in your laptop or in your PC so that you can revise at the end of the year. Thank you so much. Goodbye.